Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got a little something on the bench for you here. So we're going to be doing an unboxing of the Betafpv flight controller. This is the Matrix 1S 3-in-1. I will be installing HD0 Whoop light bundle on this guy in a 75mm Whoop. Stay tuned to my channel for that. It's going to be more of a beginner class situation. But we're going to just open this up, look at the contents, and then I'm going to go through some of the specifications that I find important, some of the things that I kind of find unique with this board. And then also, I want to grab the multimeter. I want to show you a couple things that you should be doing every time you get a new flight controller. I don't care if it's a big flight controller, a little flight controller, and also ESCs. Just kind of a few checks that you want to do before you solder it, before you install it. It makes it a whole lot easier to return it if there's an issue. And you can find that issue before you go through building the whole thing and find out it doesn't work. So we'll just kind of go through a couple of those things in this video. So that's what it's about, so stay tuned. All right, so over here at the bench, we're going to go ahead and pop this open just real quick. I'll let you know I got this from Aerial Outlaws. So Aerial Outlaws has a website that you can go to get this 3-in-1. I think they have the 4-in-1 as well, but that's where I got this 3-in-1. I have no affiliation with them at all, but I'll try to remember to put a link in the description as a convenience to you of where I got the flight controller. So we'll go ahead and open this dude up. I'm going to go ahead and put this under the microscope. We can kind of take a closer look at the components, where things are, and some of the solder pads, stuff like that. So we'll take a closer look at this. This is the first product I've purchased that has this massively large connector on it. I will probably do, during the build video that's coming to the channel, I'll probably remove this. We'll see exactly where I put it, or if I just go ahead and take all of the wiring off of it. But yeah, I don't need that big dude on there. We're going to get a weight of this here in just a second. See what else is in the box. So QR code, I assume that would go to the, I would assume that would go to a manual of some sort. So we have a small connector here. Looks like this is for the USB extender. So this doesn't have a USB connector as you would normally see, either a micro or a type C. This actually has a JST connector on it, just to save some weight. So we have this wire here, and that goes to an extension to this USB type C. I go through, if you're wanting to hardwire that. So this is kind of nice in a way, because if you bury this flight controller inside of a quad, you can run this on the outside somewhere. It makes it really convenient to access Betaflight. In my case, it's no problem to access it. I'd rather actually have the connector on here. But to save weight, they do it that way. So that will extend your USB. If you want more information about this, the previous video, the Speedy Bee flight controller all-in-one that I did, I went through this and where these connections need to go. So if you want to check that out, just fast forward to that. And then we have our HD harness, so we can look at some of the information here on the HD side, but that plugs in. We'll get a weight here on the flight controller. Then also included in here is a little package of screws. So we have some frame mounting screws for whoops. Looks like two different styles. We have a large pan head and a smaller pan head, look about the same length, and then some gummies, so we can attach the gummies into the flight controller. So our total weight is 4.73. Just to give an example here, here's a diamond, 4.9. So that's the diamond all-in-one, which has this also includes the VTX. So there is a little bit more weight with those components. So 4.9, and then this one is 4.74. I'm going to grab my multimeter here, okay? And we're just going to do a continuity check and make sure everything's ready to go. and then we'll plug a LiPo into it, and we'll make sure that we're getting our 5 volts out that we're supposed to get. So, all right, that's what we don't want to hear, and you can see it's 0, 0, 0. The reason why I check the ground on the flight controller to the ground on where the LiPo connects is if the manufacturer's cold soldered that, you'll know right away. So let's grab our ground right here, and then looks like we have a ground pad right here. All right, so by finding the ground pad right here on the flight controller and the ground pin on the Molex, what we've done is we've tracked from here all the way across to the board here, so we know that we have a good ground. So if they soldered the wire in wrong, or they cold jointed it where it's actually not connected to the components, or if there's a path interruption because they forgot a component or damaged it when they were soldering that on, that we would find that really fast, real quick. So before you go installing it and everything, you'd find that. The other thing I want to do is continuity check between the 2 pins. So we're going to grab our ground and our hot. You hear that initial beep? So that initial beep is the capacitance charging up on the board. Until those capacitance are charged all the way up, there's a little bit of continuity. There's a little bit of current flow between the ground and the hot. But once it's charged up, diodes take over. There's no more continuity. You've seen here that we had overload. We don't want that. Okay? So if you touch the ground and the hot, we don't want continuity. All right, so the next thing we want to do is just check the ground connection and to our motor pads. We do not want continuity between ground and our motor pads. So I'm just going to grab a hold of the ground pin here in the LiPo connector, and I'm just going to check each one of these pins just to make sure there's no continuity between them. If you have continuity between ground and one of these motor pads, send it back. Okay, so everything checked out there. So I'm just going to double check to make sure we don't have any continuity between our battery LiPo, because we're going to go ahead and connect a LiPo next. All right, so no continuity whatsoever between our hot and ground. So now we're going to go ahead and grab a LiPo and connect to it real quick. All right, so we're just going to set our multimeter to DC voltage, and we're going to go ahead and grab our LiPo, and we're just going to check our LiPo. You can use a LiPo checker, or you can plug it, just check it with the multimeter. So we're at 3.86, so we're at the higher storage value, so that's good. We'll go ahead and plug this dude in, and we have our LEDs come up, so everything is powering up. So now what I want to do is I want to take to the back here, and I just want to check my 5-volt pad to make sure this is actually outputting 5 volts. So we're going to take a look at that real quick. All right, so it looks good there. So those are the kind of checks that I want to do. Those are the things that I recommend everybody do with your new component, because that's brand new. You haven't soldered it, you haven't installed it, you haven't gone through all the process, and then plug it in and it doesn't work out, right? Because that's super frustrating. The next thing I would do with this is plug it into Betaflight, make sure that the gyro is working correctly, and then plug it into ESC firmware and make sure that all 4 ESCs are reading correctly. And then I would say this is a rock and roll, ready to install component. So let's go ahead and, should I show that process to you? I tell you what, I'm going to do that, and then we'll go to the micro camera. So if you don't want to see that process, just looking in Betaflight and the ESC firmware, go ahead and skip ahead to the micro camera, because that's where I'm going to pick up after that. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so the first thing we need to do is just grab our little connector here, plug it into our USB, and then we'll plug in our little extender, and then we have our USB-C, and we'll go ahead and plug that into our computer here. We'll move it out of the way. Now I'll go ahead and do the ESC first, because I need to plug in a LiPo to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it first here. All right, so we're over here at Blue Jay ESC Configurator's website, and we have our configurator up. Make sure that your radio is turned off. You do not want your radio turned on while you're messing around in here. So we'll go ahead and plug it into the computer. Okay. Betaflight COM5 pass-through. Okay. And then we'll connect to the flight controller, and now we'll go ahead and plug in our LiPo so that we can energize our ESC properly. And we'll go down here in the bottom and read. All right, so now we have all of the ESCs have read. Now here's the thing. If you go in here and you read your ESCs and you're missing one, or one of them's corrupt, or two of them, whatever the case may be, honestly, I would send it back. At this point in time, you know, this thing's brand new. You should have all 4 ESCs properly. I usually see this in purchases from different websites and stuff. If someone does a return, it gets mixed up, whatever the case may be, or they didn't flash it correctly at the factory, or there's something wrong with the microcontroller, because this thing does use BB51, so we'll look at that in the microscope a little bit more. But yeah, just make sure all your ESCs are functional and being read, and they're all there. So just a real easy, quick check. Go ahead and disconnect. We're going to go ahead and jump over to Betaflight and check the gyro. All right, so we're over here at Betaflight. We're going to go ahead and we don't have the LiPo plugged in. We're just going to plug in the flight controller. Go ahead and open this up. So problems with your configurator, version configurator, blah, 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 older version, yada, yada. Fix these problems before attempting to continue. So I'm on 10.9 configurator. So it looks like I have to update my Betaflight configurator. No big deal. Don't care about that right now. So let's go ahead and go up to the setup screen. So if I were to hold my flight controller, let me just jump over here back to the bench. Let me disconnect it. So you see here on the flight controller, you see that little arrow? So that's front, that's back. So that's going to be your supposedly that's the factory setting, that this is the front of the flight controller and this is the back of the flight controller. So they're expecting you to put this side up, that being the front. So what we're going to do is if our computer, the face of our computer, this arrow is going to be perpendicular with our computer. So put that right in here, and we're going to reset Z-axis, and then we're going to move it around and make sure it works. Simple as that. So let's jump back to Betaflight. All right, plug it in, and then go back in here. I'll grab my flight controller. I have my arrow pointing forward. I have it level as I can get it, and then I go right here to Z-axis and reset it. So now I'm pitch forward, pitch back, right, left, roll, and then I'm going to yaw it. Now I'm moving this pretty quick in my hand, so I want it to move on the screen as quick as I'm moving it in my hand. If this thing is like you're kind of going back and forth, and the quad is doing this on the screen, or if you're seeing it clocking around, set it as flat as you can and do a calibration accelerometer. If that doesn't fix it and it continues to either move really slowly or it's doing weird twitchy stuff, that could be a couple things, but it shouldn't do that brand new. This is smooth. So if I just kind of rotate this nice and smooth, everything's looking good. Over here on the side, I'm just going to check my disarm flags. So RX failsafe totally makes sense. I haven't set up the RX on this. MSP, it's hooked up to the computer, and then RPM filtering. So our motor tabs has everything to do with RPM filtering. Bidirectional D-shot. Well, guess what? I don't have a LiPo plugged into it. So I can check my bidirectional D-shot. I'll plug in a LiPo. All the ESCs chime up. I cannot spool up motors because they're not connected, but I can at least see that the bidirectional D-shot Blue Jay ESC configurators doing its job. They have 12 motor poles, so that's something you want to look at depending on the size of the motor you do. And then you can see here that I need to change some things in here later, but that's all going to be in the build video. I'm going to explain all of that stuff. So stay tuned for that. Recommend it to your friends, all that. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification bell. What else does everybody keep saying? I don't know. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump over to the micro camera and take a look at that. I'm gonna call this flight controller ready to rock and roll. So, all right, over here on the micro camera, we're just gonna take a look here. So we have our arrow that we talked about earlier. So this is the top side. So we have the front and the back, the right and the left. Look real quick here at the microcontroller. So this is the BB51. I'm a fan of the BB21, not so much of the BB51. We'll have to see how things work out. See how long it lasts. So we have our MOSFETs, our controllers. We have our pads for clock and data. So that's for programming. Everything is bound in here pretty tight. We got some voltage regulation going on here. Looks like everything's pretty tidy. Let's start off here with the Molex connection for the 04 or HD system. So all these pins represent our connection to DGI. So if you're an 04 user, we're pretty much looking at not having to deal with any soldering. This seems like a solderless application for the 04 user. If you are going to solder, we do have some pads up here. I'll look at those a little bit closer on the internet when we pull up the schematic. But we do have some solder pads here for UART 1 and 2. Yeah, just all the MOSFETs and controllers are on top. DGI. Let's flip this dude over. We have our ELRS, built-in serial ELRS receiver, so we do have Wi-Fi. And we can upload our firmware via Wi-Fi to our ELRS system. We have some more ESC. We have our processor here. So, and then of course we have that 3 amp system. So I'll describe a little bit more about that. But we have all of our components here making up our voltage system. I'm excited about seeing how clean that 5-volt signal is, 3 amps. So definitely looking forward to learning more about that. And then of course our USB. So yeah, not a whole lot to talk about in here, but this is the V1 and then HD. And then also on this side, we have our screen printing here of Matrix G4. This is the 3-in-1. So let's go ahead and jump on the internet and we'll look at some of the schematics and some of the data on the internet. All right, so over here on their website, we have the 3-in-1 pulled up. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of information in here. I just want to point out a couple things that I think is pretty cool to look at when it comes to information sharing. So they have a lot of information in here, but as you can see, so we have our schematic, we have all the Betaflight, ESC information, our ports tab set up, receiver tab set up. So quite a bit of stuff. I really like it when the manufacturer has all this information in here because it helps me when I'm trying to help somebody else out. But I just want to jump real quick into a couple bullet points here. So we have this BEC. So we have the 5-volt 3-amp BEC. Quite a bit going on with that. So you have the voltage regulator, the voltage controller, the ceramic capacitor, all these components that make up this, so that we try to, basically we're going to get like a very clean 5-volt DC signal at 3 amps. That's kind of a big deal because a lot of your flight controllers had a 1-amp rail. And then it needed to be pushed to a 1.5 amp rail. And that's kind of where we've been stagnated for a while, is 1.5 amps. And as you know, with these digital systems, they're a little more power hungry. If you look on my channel, I just did a 3-minute video where I show you the amp draw on the HD05-in-1 on that thing. Check that video out if you want to see see that. The other cool thing about this flight controller is it has 4 UARTs. So we have the DJI 04, so we have S-Bus, and we have another UART for controlling the air unit, but then it has other 2 UARTs. So a lot of times we only see, like on these type of boards, we only see 2 UARTs total, and we're using one of them for our ELRS receiver. So it's kind of nice to have some options. And then, of course, if you're savvy, you can make things change and make it do what you want. What else in here I want to share? 12 amp continuous 18 amp peak. That's quite impressive. That seems, you know, pretty high, 18 peak. It has the Blue Jay hex file here. They actually give you the hex file in here, so that's kind of neat. When I was looking in here earlier, they actually give you the hex files here. So you have a 24 hertz, 48 hertz, and 96 hertz. Really good to have those. I'm gonna probably try the 48. I'm gonna run the 96 because I'm running 27,000 kV 0802 motors. So good to see all that information. Then also the Betaflight information's right here. So they actually have a firmware folder with the dump file, the CLI dump file. So that's pretty good. So you can pretty much screw it all up, and then you can go back to square one through their website. So that's kind of good. So like I said, lots of information, ports tab, all this stuff. Let's real quick look at the schematic. So on the top board, so we looked at those solder pads, R3, T3. I think I said UART 1 and 2, but it's actually 2 and 3. UART 1 is just S-Bus for the 04 unit. So that's kind of nice. You can plug in your 04 unit and totally be solderless. I don't think there's anything you need to do. If you're using another system, you have the option of soldering in here, or you could use that Molex. You could plug it in here and just use the 4 wires that you need, power, ground, and UART 4 to run your other HD systems like HD0. That's what I plan on doing on this build video coming up. There's really not a whole lot to talk about in here. We do have some 5-volt and ground pad. I would assume if you want to do some cob lights, you could plug into that. And then you have your ELRS information, all your ELRS stuff, your boot button for your flight controller or RX, your green LED showing you're in Wi-Fi mode, all of that stuff. So, and then of course they have the status for troubleshooting, those LEDs. Quite a bit in this. So if you have any questions about anything in here, let me know in comments. I'll try to answer that during the build video. Let's go ahead and jump back over to the bench and wrap this up. Well, I tell you what, that was quite a bit of information to share. I really think it's important for you to go through each one of these steps just because it would save you so much heartache, so much time. I know for here, it's like, you know, I'm trying to show you all this information and film it and everything, so it's taking a little bit of time. But if you do this on a regular basis, I mean, this could be a 5-minute, maybe even 10-minute process, and it's going to save you so much time and headache in case there's something not right with the component, or, you know, there's something wrong with it. And just think, you didn't solder to it. You didn't install it. You found the problem before all that. So you can immediately get a refund, get it replaced, whatever the case may be. Or, you know, like I do right now, I feel pretty confident this thing's ready to work. So, hey, if this video helped you out, you know, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you didn't like it, you can give it a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.